Hey, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. This is Ben Soto, my co host Justin Soto, Funky
Hi.
Soto, and we've got special guest Tyler Wentland.
How we doing, everybody?
So, Tyler, since you didn't listen to last week's episode or the week before's,
Just call me
basically,
out.
yeah, I'm just going to call you out. No, basically, what we did with Fabrizio and with, um, oh my gosh, I'm blanking now. We're just talking about Frankie.
Frankie? Yeah.
We're just talking about Frankie. Um, we just let them talk about themselves and their artwork.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. So this is all about you, man. This is all about Tyler.
Oh, boy.
I should have just titled it that. All about Tyler. Not to
Oh,
put you on
man.
the spot, man, but you gotta pull out Frankie.
Yeah, I know. And I've been sweating about that for a week, but I wasn't able to do any of my homework. But so, yeah. I guess to starters, though, we're just kind of sketching some red koi stuff. I got to figure out what I'm drawing.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Tyler Wentland, been drawing, one of these kids I was drawing ever since I could hold a pencil, really. Um, I mean, there's no, like a lot of you guys are probably the same, but like I have no memory of me in my life where I wasn't drawing. I was talking to my daughter this morning. She came in and she was just kind of looking at what I was working on, and she was saying, I want to draw. I want to draw like you. And I was like, I've always done it. Even when I was watching cartoons, just had a pencil in my hand, so you could do that. But it's probably been the most consistent thing in my life. And I remember being a kid and kind of the funny. I mean, it's funny thinking of it at the just being a kid. But I remember learning about how I remember not knowing who owned Batman or Superman or Spider-Man, but I remember learning about that Todd McFarlane owned Spawn, and that it was a big deal to him to own Spawn. Um, and that it was important for him to have his character he could write, that he could draw for a time, but that was his to make or break as he saw fit, and that's what he says to this day, and he still loves his character to this day. But that made such an impression on me that one guy could do everything on a book and own it, and kind of have that entire world be his. And so that always kind of struck me. So I just kind of have always felt, I want my character. I want them you know, to be fully fleshed from my imagination and what I'm interested in. I've never worked with a writer, as I don't know, writers who read my stuff, maybe you can tell. But that's why I'm lucky to have Peter Samedi kind of looking over my stuff and making sure it makes sense. But I've never worked with an actual writer because I've never wanted to be told what to draw. I've had a few kind of reach out to me and see if I was interested. And it's always kind of, oh, I'm so thank you, I'm flattered, but no, thank you. I've got kind of the everything that I'm looking for with what I'm doing now, because it's what I've always wanted. And so I kind of followed that same route. When I got into Mike Mignola's Hellboy. Hellboy was a game changer for me, man. Like it was seeing not a superhero book, but sort of a superhero book, but a superhero book that was so completely different and so completely steeped in what Mignola likes. He likes folklore and legend and you know, religion and all these weird things, ghost stories and mysteries, and he kind of jammed it all into this odd package, and it made such an impression on me that he could do that and that it was so cool. And also his style was like nothing I'd ever seen. But again, he owned the character, he wrote it, he drew it for a time. Um, and that was always kind of what I wanted. So that pushed my style from like maybe the more hyper realistic influence of, well, realistic slash cartoony influence of McFarlane to more of the love for shadows and things like that. And I could name, other artists who are also writers that made the same. Scott Morse, he did a book he's a Pixar guy, but he always has done comics as well. He did he's done tons of books, but he did a book called The Barefoot Serpent, which was really influential. He kind of balances the stories of um, Akira Kurosawa and this in his life, which is marked by tragedy, even as he's this celebrated director, with the story of this little girl who's going on vacation with her family after the death of her brother, and he uses sort of this tragedy of this character and the actual real life tragedy of this great filmmaker, and he balances it in such a way that I'm like, this, I feel like you can kind of see inside his mind how it was working, and I don't know if you'd get that if it had to go through a writer, through a third party, or not a third party, second party, but it's just sort of like this pure expression. So I don't know. I could go on about others as well. Becky Cloonan's another one. I love her stuff, but I don't know. That's kind of that's where I was going there. What do you guys think?
What do we think? Man, we think that sucks. No, I'm just kidding.
You said talk.
Yeah, keep on talking. Keep doing it. No, so did you go to art school or anything?
No, I've never gone to art school. I had to actually, when I decided I wanted to take this really seriously, I actually was like, okay, well then I took a hard look at my art, and I was like, all right, you've got a lot of catching up to do, because it's like you don't go to art school, you don't draw anything that you don't want to draw, you never learn those things, and so it's like I gave myself a year, and I was like, okay, there are all these great videos of like Greg Capullo and Sean Murphy and some of the other like top artists just talking about what books that really helped them, or what what kind of practice they did. And so I just read those books and I did that. And so, it was like but I also was kind of training myself to write at the same time, because I was like, okay, I'll take a short story and I'll make a short story set in a city. And so I'll practice perspective and buildings and cars and people of different ages and, different scenes and stuff. I'll get that practice out of the way, and I'll practice telling a story. And I did that. I did two old men like playing chess in a park. And then I did one where it was like, okay, I'd read this cool story about how young Maasai boys in Tanzania used to have to hunt a lion, to become accepted men in the Maasai tribe. So I was like, well, that sounds just awesome. So I drew a short story of a young Maasai warrior hunting a lion in the plains. And so I did that for about a year until I saw a contest for Valiant. I had been reading some Valiant stuff, and they had this cool, it was like an art contest. I was like, well, all right, cool, let's give it a try. And I ended up winning. It was just like a single piece, and I ended up winning. I sort of did it on a whim. And this guy called me from Valiant one day, and he told me I won. He's like, so if you ever if you're ever in New York, come to the office. We'd love to give you a tour. And I was like, could I get a portfolio review? And he's like, yeah, sure. If you come to New York, I was like, I can be in New York next month. I have a brother-in-law that lives in New York. So we made the plan and made the trip, and I got out there, and the Valiant folks were great. This was back in 2015. I mean, I don't know what Valiant's up to these days, but awesome. They treated me so well, and I got a portfolio review. And this guy, he sits down and he looks at my stuff and he goes, okay, I got to tell you something. I was like, oh God, here we go. I was like, all right, cool. I want to know. I got to a point where I was like, tell me if I suck. I want to know. I need to know. So I was really looking for that. And he goes, when I heard that some guy won a contest and wanted a portfolio review, I got really nervous because I didn't want to come in here and hurt someone's feelings, if they weren't very good. He's like, but this is good, so I'm happy. I was like, awesome. Okay,
that's awesome. Cool. Yeah.
This is great. And he looked at the Maasai story, And he goes, okay, so this guy, the art for this man is very bad. His face looks bad. All this looks bad. But your lion, this lion looks awesome. I was like, really? He's like, yeah. A lot of times artists, they'll find something that works for them and they'll lean into it. It's like, Sean Murphy has the car thing. I'm sure people can name other things. That's the first one that comes to my mind. But then he's like, but for you, it could be animals. And I love drawing animals. And if you read any of my stuff, I've got animals kind of in every single
Right.
issue in some capacity. Um, and so it was just kind of a cool window into what I was doing. And at that time, I had started working on my first comic, in over a year, uh, and that which ended up being a retelling of Hercules' first trial against the Nemean lion, which ended up being published in Alterna's If anthology, and that was my first published work. And I had worked on almost a 60-page graphic novel before then. I had done a 99-page simple two-panel kind of piece, a kind of two-panel comic before that. Before that year where I decided I had to kind of take myself back to school. So I had made comics before as best I could, but that was the first one I did, and I was like, all right, this is different than what I've done before. And then Pete, he emailed me. He's like, hey, I'd love to put this in there. Could you hire a real letterer and maybe think about adding some gray wash to it? I was like, yes, I can do both of those things. Actually, I tried to re-letter it myself twice, and he's like, this just really isn't working. I was like, yeah, because I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just like everyone else. Everyone thinks they can letter until they try, and then you appreciate what a real letterer is.
Yes.
So, and that's why I have worked with Wes Loker ever since, and it just makes me look far better than I am.
That's awesome.
Yeah, no, Wes is great. Yeah, that's I forgot your question. Oh, art school. No, I didn't.
No,
I didn't go to art school. How about you guys? You guys go to art school?
Yeah. So, yeah, we took some classes in college.
Cool.
Yeah.
Same college?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
We both
nice.
went to Texas Tech.
Oh, cool. That must have been cool.
It was all right.
I mean, being there with your brother, at least.
Well, we weren't there together, but
Oh,
No.
all right.
Yeah, we're about 7 years apart, so.
Oh, that's different. See, I didn't do my homework, guys.
that's all right.
No, yeah, I don't. Art school's tricky. Me and my girlfriend met at art school, and we talk about the problem with it is that it kind of pushes you towards whatever the professor is interested in, not what you're interested
Yeah.
in, and that's where I think we ran into most of our issues with art school.
And did they ever talk to you about like finance, selling your work, starting a business, any of that stuff, actually
Absolutely
making
not.
money? Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, okay.
We had one class that was called senior seminar, and that's where they talk to you about looking for a job. But even then, they don't tell you how to get one. It's more like if you're really good, you could probably sell your stuff in a gallery, but probably not.
This is your senior seminar. Hopefully, you're really good. Sorry, no one told you if you're not.
Right. Now that you spent 4 years here.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's at the end of your college career, and they're like,
Thanks
"Well,
for your tuition." Oh my goodness. How long have you guys been drawing for?
Oh, long time.
I mean, forever? Or did this come on in high school or something?
Forever. I started when I was 13.
Yeah. Yep.
And I started when I was probably about 5 or so, maybe. I would always doodle, and that's one thing. But then I started, getting really interested in drawing, for the fun of drawing.
Yep.
Yeah, when I was probably about 6 or 7. Like I said, I'm 7 years behind Ben, 7 years younger than him. So whenever he picked up a hobby, I picked up that hobby. So, that's how that goes.
feel like that must be a brother thing because my sister did not care at all about comic books or art. She was like, "What a nerd my older brother is." But
Yeah, our sisters were the same way.
yeah, I was like, and now she thinks it's cool. She's like, "It's so cool that you have a comic." It's like, well, thanks for coming around, I guess.
Right.
Now that you're somebody.
Yeah, yeah. Now that you've proven this wasn't all for naught.
Yeah. So tell us about Red Koi. How did that start off for you?
Oh yeah. So I did the Hercules story, and then I had done a few more short stories. I did one that was published in a anthology published by a different guy. I can't remember what his studio is called, but it was like set. It was a set to Edgar Allan Poe's poem El Dorado. It was an Edgar Allan Poe themed anthology, and I mean, I like creepy stuff just as much as the next guy. But I had never really had a personal interest in Poe. I mean, I liked what I had to read in school, but never really sought it out after that. But I
Right.
wanted to find something that I could do, but kind of still give myself the freedom of not feeling like I was beholden to a whole story and just having to kind of do the images to it. But El Dorado is a poem, so I was like, okay, and I read it, and it was this like really kind of weird. I can't even remember what it was about, but it gave me this image of, and what the comic ended up being was like this lone knight in front of his, you know, castle fortress that's on fire, and he's taking his dagger, and he's all of his brothers are dead, and he's like about to kill himself. And at that moment, this like angel Valkyrie, some kind of angelic being, she stops him. She puts her hand on his shoulder and says, "No, look." Like, and then she doesn't say it, but she just kind of stops and then points to the the horizon. And as he looks, just massive beasts are just swarming over the hillside to finish off the fortress. And he just looks up with so much gratitude. He's like, "Oh, thank God, I can die well." He puts his helmet back on. And you guys familiar with like the Teutonic Knights? They had like those helmets with the gigantic like horns and stuff,
Oh
and
yeah.
like the black crosses. They were just like utterly brutal,
Yeah.
but so cool looking. And so, but he puts this helmet on, and then he takes this gigantic warhammer, and he just starts stalking towards this big, massive monsters that he has no hope defeating. But but that's the end. That's 5 pages. That was all of it. But so that was kind of another thing. And then my goal at that time, I just kind of started to set small goals for myself. I was like, I want something published every year. And so it was short stories. So I did that. I did a crime short in the Alterna anthology Crime, and it was like that one ended up being like I had three groups. I had these Irish gangsters, I had these bikers, and I had these triads. And I had really wanted to draw a cool chase scene, and so what I did was I had a story where these Irish gangsters are just like they're just talking in a pub, and then these triads shoot up the pub. And so then the Irish guys, they jump in, this like I don't know if it was like a '67 tornado or something, and then they start chasing down the triads because this is the triads' revenge on the Irish guys doing something to them. And so then, oh GJ, how are you, bud? Good to see you.
Yeah.
And so then
Yeah.
they they're flying after the triads, through this really windy city, and then they go through past a biker bar, and they clip a bike, and so these bikers then they're chasing the Irish guys, and so then I have it kind of all they're chasing them down, and so they end up at the in Chinatown chasing each other up to the top of this building, and they end up in this standoff where everybody's got like the gun to each other's head. And
Yeah.
so I have this terrible habit of having these cliffhanger endings. I've got I've had multiple friends tell me like, "But who wins? Like, what happens in the end?" It's like, I don't know. It just always kind of stops there. I think with Red Koi, I'll have to figure that out. But so I had these short stories. Then I was like, okay, I feel comfortable doing short stories. I feel more comfortable with my art. I want to, um, I want to start, um, I want to try something longer. I was like, I want to try a Kickstarter or something. And so I had been trying to do like almost like a Viking shield maiden story where but when I drew the first couple pages, it was like shield maiden returning to her village, and like it's, been ransacked and everyone's dead or something like that. And I just wanted it to be like a singular warrior for some reason in my mind at the time as a woman, and then I wanted it to be a monster, and I just knew it was those things. Those were kind of my key connectors, and it just wasn't working. And so then I had read this book a long time ago. It was the autobiography of the daughter of a Yakuza boss, and the book is called Yakuza Moon, and her name is Shoko Tendo. And she had this book. It's like what you imagine. She's living this life around these horribly dangerous guys, and just getting into everything that they're getting into, and just it's really, it's amazing she lived through everything that she's been through.
Yeah.
But a cathartic moment in the book was, the tattooing is such a, something like we all love, and like the Yakuza thing. You say Yakuza and people think of, tattoos and clip pinkies, and so she met this traditional Japanese tattoo artist, and she told him her story, and he said, okay, this is the piece that you go for. And so she got a courtesan. There's this legend of the court of this certain courtesan, and she got this story tattooed on her back, and the cover of the book. I could actually show you if you want to see it, probably.
Yeah.
It's on my bookshelf. Let me grab it real quick. I was like, I don't have it. I don't remember donating it, but I don't have it. So this is her, and this is her tattoo.
Okay, let me put you on full screen here.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, like, you have, she had this cool legend of this courtesan, but she got her full back, like arms, all this stuff. But this piece just struck me so much because you have this specific style that they would do, for with the way they would draw, and I just thought it was so cool. And so I did sort of this kind of pose as a painting in gray wash, but I made her a samurai because I learned that there were female samurai, and so I did a female samurai, but she was like sort of set in the background of this castle. And then I was just like, well, what's in that castle? Why did I do this castle here?
Right.
I just thought I was filling space, but great book though, and really beautiful person. She thank God she survived. And so my mind just kind of started going, and I was thinking about what was in the castle, why it was in such a creepy kind of swampy area. Who was she that she's kind of in this place?
Right.
And so it just kind of developed from there. And what I really found I had to do with a story, I had to overwrite. So I wrote out like who she was, who her people were, what their beliefs were, what their mythology was. So I didn't want to live in the realm of like telling an actual samurai's biography. I also didn't want to live in the, real world, because I want to draw monsters.
Right. Real quick,
So-
DJ says, speaking of tattoos, that first cover of Red Koi is quite amazing.
You, sir, are a good friend, and I appreciate you very much. Yeah, this was fun. This is a lot of fun. I don't know if you saw my tweet the other day, but it was just like, I don't know if I'll ever do like more scenes of her like with the whole tattoo showing,
Right.
because it's great because it helped me kind of understand Irizumi a bit, and actually there's a lot of her story that will be told that's on the tattoo. But it was like doing, these scenes where like she's walking around, you've got the tattoo and it's at different angles and stuff. I was like, okay, it's cool because now I know where stuff is for the most part, but this is really hard. I don't think I can do that
Yeah.
again. But yeah, no, thank you, GJ. GJ's I've been a great supporter for God, years now, has it been? Man. Um, but so I really had to overwrite, and then I was like, okay, I've only done short stories. I got to pare this down to like, a shorter story. So I really focused on the fact that it was set in that castle, that that castle is one place, that it's clearly got to be haunted, that there's clearly got to be some big monster there for her to deal with. Um, and I had enough of the mythology in my mind that I could hint at things. So, I have like, that um, her sword was um, sword was sired from the sea dragon Ryushin, who was defeated by the great and terrible Tiger Lord Shoki Kaigo. I had no idea what any of that meant at the time. I had no idea what any of that, but it came from somewhere.
It sounded cool.
It sounded cool, and I was like, I would read that. And it's enough to make I wanted the world to feel lived in.
Right.
That's what I always like more than anything in in comics. I felt like that if it didn't feel lived in, it's gonna feel too generic. Excuse me. And so that was kind of what was helpful about the overwriting. And I feel like I'm talking too much. I was telling my wife the other day, I was like, I feel like I need to stop talking so much, but this is really how the show goes, you promise?
This is how the show goes.
This
Yes.
isn't the setup to
Yeah.
make me
Honestly,
look
you're not
silly
talking
after
about-
Frankie was
Sorry.
on.
Your wife's not going to come in and swat you, I promise. You're gonna be good.
No, I was telling her I was talking too much. She's like, you don't talk too much. I was like, no, I definitely do. No, okay. Well, so I had that all kind of worked out, and I felt really good about it. But the weird thing is, like, and this is probably like kind of silly to say, but like, I never really wanted to tell a samurai story. Like, I never had a great desire to do a samurai book. I always thought samurai were cool, but I wasn't. That just hadn't struck me before. But then I had this world, like this fantasy world, created that I wasn't expecting, and this, and I was gonna kickstart it, and then Pete Sametti is actually, we're relatively close to each other here in New England, because everything's pretty close in New England. And so we were at a comic shop together doing a free comic book day or something. And we had done a few of those things. And Pete's always just been very good to me, very generous with his time, and a great mentor. And I brought my portfolio with all my Red Koi pages in it. And I like set it up like strategically. Like my table was facing, this is perpendicular to Pete's. So I kind of like angled my stuff like out, like kind of just in his direction all day, just trying to force it.
Right.
And eventually, we're busy all day doing our stuff. Eventually Pete comes over, he's like, hey, what's this? It's like, oh, something I was thinking about Kickstarting. He's like, maybe you send it to me. Maybe I publish it. And I was like, oh, yeah, maybe I will. Just try not to sweat, and stuff. And he did, and then like I think that was 2017, and then like things just went crazy for Alterna, just like nuts in every like good ways and bad ways, and Pete's weathered those storms, but Alterna just was like also growing like crazy, and so it wasn't published until 2019, and the response was just it was so much more than I could have. I'd never expected to hear some of the things that I heard from people, just with how much they like the character and how much they like the story. I don't know, people really responded to it, and I didn't know what to expect, because I was honestly, I was making this book for me in a lot of ways, just because I this sounds so bad, but like I read an issue of Red Clay, I'm like, yeah, I would read that. Or like I would pick that book up. It's just the things that I like, even down to, the Joro Gomo, the Spider Woman. she's a demon. She's she's sort of a spiritual creature, in this world, but she's also a giant spider. Oh, GJ, thank you, man, dude. I love drawing the architecture. I like, especially if you've seen the Volume 1 collection, and it's got that backstory in it with the Golden Citadel. Drawing that massive fortress was just so much fun for me. I mean, it's insanely time consuming,
I
but
bet.
it's so fun. But thank you, GJ. I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, I was sharing your artwork with my brother. I think it was sometime last week, and yeah, that architecture, like every single shingle that you put on that roof, was like amazing.
Thank you, man. Yeah, no, it was it's fun, and that's what I like about fantasy is like, I mean, obviously the world's a lot weirder a lot of times than we give it credit for, and what ancient people were able to construct is, beyond my ability to understand. But, I could push things to be so grand and so crazy and so strange, why wouldn't I? So it's like, all right, it's going to be a fortress. Well, it'll be a fortress on the cliff of a waterfall, and it's just going to be, absurdly massive. Okay, cool, sounds fun. And then I'm going to draw this Dark Lord of the Samurai clan. Well, he's going to be a giant. Why? I don't know. We'll figure that out at some point. It's going to be great. So yeah, Red Koi's just turned into something I never anticipated, but I couldn't be happier with the what it's become. Hopefully people like where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they will. It's a great looking book too. How'd you find Nick?
Nick approached me because it was in Red Koi was in black and gray, and Pete said, color is really going to be the difference maker with this. So, would you be okay finding a colorist? I was like, yeah, let's see what happens. So Pete put the tweet out there, and Nick replied, and he goes, first thing he says, "Is this a paying gig?" I was like, "Yeah, man. Yeah, it's a paying gig. This is not for exposure, I promise." Um, he's like, "Okay," and he literally said, "Because I know how this is supposed to look, and I don't want someone to ruin it." I was like, "That's awesome. I love this guy's confidence." It's like, "All right, well, let's see you do some. Let's see what you got." Because I have an idea in my head of like some kind of a pink, red, washy kind of vibe. But I was like, "But I'm not really looking for real world colors. I kind of want you to follow the emotions of the story." He's like, "No, no, I know, I got it. I know what it's supposed to look like." Okay, all right. So he did and Nick's super polite. I'm making him sound rude, but he basically said that, but in the nicest way. Um, and so I hired him to color a couple pages, and he did it. And I remember it was like, because all my stuff was being done early in the morning, and I got his pages, and I like run downstairs to my wife, like, "Babe, look what he did. It looks like a real comic now." And she's like, she's like, "This is great stuff." And so Nick's, he's been along with Wes, they've just been part of this team, and what they bring to the table, is you know, uh, the book wouldn't be what it is without Nick and Wes doing what they do. They bring so much to it. They add their layers are, irreplaceable. Um, and so it's been just an absolute treat to have them be a part of it, and they're so supportive of the book. The funny thing is, I didn't realize this till Nick said, I don't send him any of the lettering or any of the story. So he has no idea really what the story is until he actually reads the issues.
Oh
He's
wow.
just coloring based on what he's getting from the artwork.
Hmm.
And so he's just kind of doing his best to follow, and it always, everything he sent me, I'm almost always over the moon with.
Oh yeah, his colors are great.
Yeah, no, he's right. He understood exactly what it was supposed to be. And he's working on his own project too. Have you seen his stuff, his posts?
Yeah, I think it's called Samarex.
Samarex, yeah. So he's doing that. He's still going to be working on Red Koi stuff, but he's got multiple projects that he's been working on for a while, and this is the one he really wants to pull the trigger with. So I'm psyched to see what he does. But Nick's an all-around colorist, artist, writer. He's hilarious.
Yeah, I'll have to have him on sometime.
Yeah, you should definitely. He's way more entertaining than I am. You guys are doing Ico?
Yep.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. I decided I wanted to do her father, Naga,
All right, let me put you on full screen here,
just to be difficult.
just to be cool, just to be different.
cool. Yeah. I don't know. I'm trying to
Oh, nice.
feel it out because I never have drawn his face. He's always masked, or it's like there's this shot in the story where you kind of learn like his soul is basically in torment as long as the red woman lives, and it's just a skull face and stuff. But I got some of his armor here, so it's one of these things where like I should probably figure out what he looks like at some point, or like what his layout is.
All right, Justin, I'm going to put you on solo. See what you got going on.
Oh,
Nice.
Jeez, man.
Like that. It's kind of similar to the pose I'm doing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're brothers. I
Nice.
don't know what you want.
Right. Yeah. So.
Nice, guys.
That's awesome.
Now, the comic, Ben, that you're working on, Justin, are you working on it with him, or are you doing other things?
Yeah.
Both.
We're working on it together.
Okay.
We're working on it together. I'm doing
Yes.
some of my own stuff too.
Yes to all the
developing
things.
my own stuff.
Yes.
Nice. So what are like some of the, how do I say this? What are some of the comics that like were like, like the comics for you guys that you were like, okay, no, I've gotta do this, or I've gotta make like something that made you be like, this is the coolest thing.
Go
Game
ahead.
changer comics for you, I guess.
From a very early age, I guess, or at least the earliest age I can remember thinking like, this is something that I would really like to make, or something that really inspired me was, I think it was in '96 or something like that. Marvel put out Iron Man, and I loved the way that Sean Chen drew Iron Man. I loved because I think he was like a mechanical engineer in college or something like that. So he had like a really firm grasp of how to draw machine stuff. And I think that was the first comic book I was like, I want to draw it like that.
Yeah.
And then just like in terms of what comic books could be, I can probably go back a little further to, I want to say like 90, 91 or something like that. Marvel released Deadpool, his own little mini series with Ian Churchill drawing it. And I love the way he would like put detail in it, and the character was very, wisecracking and funny, but like the art was so dark, and it had this really nice duality to it that I was like, that's crazy. I didn't know you could do that. Like it just felt so like dark because it was the '90s and everyone was trying to be image, and
Oh yeah.
But
I'm still trying that. It's not working, but I'm trying.
But yeah, those were some of like the bigger ones for me when I was a lot younger.
Cool.
And then of course, Hellboy. And now that I'm a little bit older, I'm getting into that kind of stuff. It's like really strong fundamentals and
Yeah.
John Buscema and some great inkers. So yeah, I mean, I'm still getting inspired to this day, just not by anything current necessarily.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you Michael Turner guys? Were you guys Michael Turner fans?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was okay.
Okay.
I guess. I was a fan of his from Wizard magazine, and I only really learned about him because Wizard did a spotlight when he left oh God, what was it?
Top Cow.
Top Cow to start Aspen.
Right.
And again, it was another guy. He's just like the top guy. He could do a cover for DC or a cover for Marvel and like make all his bills for a month or two.
Yeah.
Like, and he's just like, I want to try this. And he just had this amazing life and personality. Obviously, that made everything so much more sad when he passed. But he just left such a legacy in his art. So I'm. It's so weird. Like I've probably bought 4 or 5 of the same collections of like Aspen and Soulfire and Fathom and stuff. Like I've probably got a bunch of reprints of the same things just because every time I see a new old cover like in a back bin somewhere or just some new piece, I have it's like love for the creator and his artwork more than the story or the character really.
Right.
But he was another one that was big for me. What about you, Ben? What about comics that were like game changers?
For me, I think it was David Michelinie and Mark Bagley on Amazing Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
I think their run was like my penultimate favorite. Like to me, that's what comic book should be. It should be fun. It should be exciting, entertaining.
How often do you like to see characters eating in your comic books? Is that
not as frequently as you'd think? Not much at all.
Pete had that joke with us for a while. He's like, we're gonna do like a dozen pages of characters eating. I was like, I would actually probably really enjoy drawing like some really cool, I don't know, like giant like banquet table spread or something like that. I feel like that'd be fun, but I'd probably be exhausted after the first one.
That should be a poster, like all the alternate characters just sitting around eating. Just a print.
This is mostly what we do. Draw.
So, which artist inspired you the most? I guess. How about this? Because we all kind of change, like who we aspire to be like or all from, as we grow as artists. So, starting off, like who was that kind of sparked your imagination, and then who are your heroes now? I guess that you're looking at, you're learning from.
Yeah. Well, starting off, it had to be Todd McFarlane was the first like artist I knew because my buddy had a copy of Spawn, and my mom would never have bought me Spawn, but my buddy had a copy of Spawn, so I was able to see it. And I mean, I had been reading a lot of what I realized now was a lot of Mark Silvestri and Jim Lee X-Men as a kid. I just didn't know who they were. I was just buying comics for the artwork. And just staring at their stuff. And like I knew what I liked and I knew what I didn't like. And it was definitely that Mark Silvestri, Todd McFarlane, sort of hyper detailed, sort of realistic, but also cartoony look. And so that was major for me for a long time, just trying to get my stuff to look more like theirs. And then let's see what else. And then it was Mike Mignola who did the opposite of what they did, who was trying to simplify his stuff more and more and more, but who had this just love of shadow that I just found so appealing. And I was shocked later on to learn that a lot of artists are afraid of shadow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, and I was like, this is bizarre. You can hide stuff that you don't want to draw. And
shadows are your friend.
I'm just gonna say it, like, but it's also it's amazing how your imagination will fill in details that in shadow that they won't, in white space.
There's that saying, when in doubt, black it out.
Yes, and I love that saying. So I was trying to be like Mike Mignola for a long time. To a lesser degree, Eric Powell. I loved The Goon, and I loved his cartoony style. but I never necessarily wanted to go that far. I love Stan Sakai. I love Usagi Yojimbo. I never wanted to draw like him, though I love the way that he draws. I love his cartoony characters. I love that book. I've got like 7 or 8 volumes of Usagi back there.
Nice.
And so he was another one. In terms of heroes, I love what Becky Cloonan has done with her independent books, like By Chance or Providence has collected them. But she's got these short stories like Wolves and a couple of there's these medieval-ish kind of Viking-ish kind of stories. And I love Becky Cloonan's artwork in those. They're sort of the perfect middle ground for me between cartoony and realistic. So she's one hero. Who else? Heroes. Oh, I'm gonna forget his last name, but Christian, who does Voidwalker.
Oh, Rossi, yeah.
Christian Rossi. He's a hero. I love everything that Christian draws.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Everything that he draws, I am in awe of, and he does so much. And he's so fast, and it looks so good. He's an incredible artist, and he's another one that strikes that perfect balance where I say I wish I could draw like that guy.
Yeah, I can't think of a more prolific artist than Christian Rossi.
Yeah, it's just everything he does. It's oh, you should draw this book. Oh, you should draw that book. You should draw that book too. This is amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Christian's definitely on that list. To be honest with you, it's kind of weird. I get comics. I definitely pick up comics and stuff like that, but I don't follow a ton of stuff. I like James Stokoe. He's doing a book sort of like a kung fu fantasy book called Orphan and the 5 Demons or something. And his stuff is cool. His hyper detailed, hyper cartoony kind of stuff. Yeah, I feel like I'm such a, I don't know, I just don't pay attention to a lot of stuff not happening in Alterna.
Right.
And then stuff that I'll follow stuff on Instagram. Oh, Steven Subeck. He's done a lot of stuff in he's got mostly French editions coming out now, and he's done a version of Conan. My favorite novel is Tarzan of the Apes, the first novel, and he's doing a comic adaptation, which I've never really seen an adaptation I like, which you think it'd be easy. He's doing a comic adaptation that's just come out in French, and I think they're going to do an English translation this year. And Steven Subeck, if you look up his stuff, if you want to see beautiful black and white artwork, Steven Subeck stuff is where it's at. Subac, I think. Hey, Johnny, how are you?
Yeah, Johnny Johnson says, how are you, gentlemen? What you working on? We are drawing characters created by Tyler Wentland here from Red Koi.
Boom, right here.
Got issue number 5 right here.
I got issue number 1 right here.
Yeah.
1 through 5. So yeah, sorry if I'm rambling. I'm just trying to bring myself back. I've been looking at a lot of old art recently, almost a lot of traditional art.
Yeah.
Ancient art. I've looked at a lot of ancient medieval art, a lot of iconography and stuff. I don't know where that's going to filter out in terms of my brain, but we will see.
Yeah.
Is there anything that's got you guys excited? I mean, in terms of, artists that are inspiring you now?
For me, Alex Raymond. I've been looking at a lot of his work.
Alex Raymond. I don't know the name.
I don't have my book here with me. Actually, Justin, go ahead. I'm going to grab my book and I'll show it off here for a second.
All right. Actually, recently just got the art book for 5 Metal Gear Solid games.
Oh, geez.
And
that must be so cool.
It is probably the best investment investment I've ever made in an art book.
Really? It's a collection of 5 volumes?
Yeah, well, so it's a collection of the artwork for the 5 games. I guess Hideo Kojima considers those 5 games to be like, or maybe it's 4 games, because it's Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, 3, and yeah, it is 4, and then Peace Walker.
And what's the book called? Because that sounds awesome. I gotta check it out.
It is called, oh god, I think it's just called The Art of Metal Gear Solid. The thing is that I had to buy it in French. I don't speak a word.
Yeah.
But I need to look at the pictures. That's really all I want.
I almost bought that Tarzan volume in French, but I was like, okay, I can wait, I guess. And I'm still not convinced I can.
Yeah, but like if you look it up on Amazon or something like that, if you buy it in English, it's going to cost like $500 or something. But if you if you buy it in French, it's like 100 or less. So
I'll use Google Translate if I really need to know what's being said.
I really want to know what he wrote. There was like little notes in there.
Let's be honest, we're artists. We're not going to read it.
It's true.
Yeah,
it's so.
We're just going to look at it.
That is not what I bought.
You guys are like, no, seriously, tell me what happens in Red Koi, because I haven't read it. I don't know what. I wouldn't be offended.
So this is Alex Raymond's artwork here.
Oh my. Oh, he reminds me of Tim Sale too.
Yeah.
Tim Sale's another one on my list.
Yeah, I don't know if it's showing up or not, but.
Oh my goodness. So you're just gonna make me want to quit.
Yeah, his artwork. So he used to draw, I guess, a newspaper comic strip called Rip Kirby.
Yeah.
And I absolutely love his line work. It's almost like an illustrator's style. Like you could draw clothes or something.
You can hear how my jaws dropped.
For like JCPenney or something, that I go buy them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, don't you wish people advertised like that? No.
That'd be cool.
Maybe just maybe more of a grander time.
Yeah, I love these like just really heavy dark ones.
Yes. Oh, I love when you have like the full black silhouette and just the white of the the tuxedo or something like that. I'm such a sucker for that.
Yeah, me too.
It's so cool.
Yeah, I love his artwork.
Very cool, man. I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing, so I'm just gonna start throwing some ink on there and see what happens. Sorry for the table squeaking.
My desk is squeaky too.
This is like my wife's grandparents, like like the family desk where like all bills and stuff were kept for years in the living room.
Right.
She's like, you shouldn't lean on that too hard. It's probably gonna break someday. It's like, oh. I'll most likely be drawing or using my computer or something expensive when it does.
Right. So, talk to us about, was it Black Swan?
Swan King.
Swan King, yes.
Yeah. I was going to do a comics adaptation of Black Swan, but then I thought probably should.
That movie.
Yeah, so the Swan King actually came about when Red Koi was going through it had been accepted. I had gotten the Alterna approval. It was going to come out as an Alterna book, but Alterna was just in a place where they couldn't put it out at that time. And so I have had this thing where ever since I got my first comic book published, I was like, I don't want a year to go by without having something published, even if it's just a short story. I don't want to, lose any of that momentum.
Right.
And so I decided that I was going to do a Kickstarter, so I just worked up this short story. Just a one shot, and I wanted it. So I loved that Red Koi was like a samurai fantasy, and so but I wanted something in that European fantasy kind of space with like a knight. Because I like those kind of classic warrior archetypal characters. I want my samurai character. I want my knight character. You know, I'll have other characters that kind of fit. This way, I could just kind of take the world's warrior peoples and find a place for them in my fantasy world and go from there. And so that was the Swan King. And so again, I was like trying to figure out what I had to figure out his story. It's like I can't just have a character and let them, and just I can't just for some reason I can't just have a character, find a monster in the woods. Like I need to know, well, why is this character in the woods? What is he doing once he's there? Why is he the name came to me first. It was like the Swan King, and I was like, that's kind of weird. It sounds kind of classical, like a fairy tale that you would, you know, find in some old book, but at the same time, he's also this very dangerous character. And so I had to kind of figure out, well, why did that happen? Why is he kind of go by the Swan King, but why is he so despised and feared by all of the people in his realm? Why does he live on this, castle on a lake where he paddles among the swans every night just to find some kind of semblance of peace? Like, what does he need peace from? And so what it kind of came to is this king had led his people in a war against the giant clans. And I only learned later that like every major civilization in the world has some legend about a war against the giants, which is like the coolest thing that I've ever learned.
That is cool.
People that have no connection to each other throughout history of time. There's like, no, they've got a legend about a great flood and about a war against the giants. I'm like, well, this is great. I want to play in that world. So I did that, so I kind of did that. But in the course of winning this war, spoiler alert, he he drove his people as hard as he needed to, which cost a lot of life. So he won, but sons and fathers and brothers all over his country were lost in the process. And so you have this broken world, and he only wanted to save his people, but they despise him for it. And so he's sort of this outcast that just wants to find a way to make amends. And so this moment comes in the story where he's in his castle, he's by himself, he paddles among the swans, he finds peace in nature, but then something happens and the swans are disturbed, and he's got to investigate, and he finds that there's been a giant has fallen asleep in up on a mountain that's kind of a giant has fallen asleep that's blocked the water from coming in. So the giants are still around, but to a much lesser degree. They're taken care of. But so they eventually got that into it being he's passed out from being in a drinking contest with the devil. And so when he's got to go up the mountain to find the devil or this demon and kind of figure out how to solve this problem. And so it's like I got to get into the history of the world. You got to see multiple sides of this great battle that impacted the world. You meet multiple fantasy characters. Like there's a river nymph. There's obviously there's Swan King. There are animals in there. But you kind of just see how she's trying to operate in this world still, but kind of outcast from it. There's no part of this place that hasn't been touched by this war and the way that he conducted it. And then there's this joke that the devil makes when he's trying to sort of goad the Swan King into taking a bet. And he says something like, oh, King of Ravens is what they said your name should be. Huh. funny thing that, or something like that, like that death follows him wherever he goes. So, but I loved the character. I love the story. Alterna released the one shot. It is funny. I was drawing the cover for that. It sounds bad, but I had when my wife was in the hospital and having our second child, she was sleeping, and when she was sleeping, I had my drawing board with me, and I was drawing this cover for the Alterna release, and and then people really responded to the that character, and so one night Pete sent me a text, and he was like, "Hey, have you ever thought about the Swan King and Red Koi meeting each other?" I was like, "Well, now I am. Thanks." And then I couldn't sleep all night because I was like, "Oh man, I've got this idea and that idea and this idea and that idea." And so that's going to be issue 6 of Red Koi. So anybody that is a fan of the Swan King will find issue 6 of Red Koi to be like his I don't know, you could say like his second issue or something.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was a cool opportunity. And I had sort of thought about it before. Like I know the thought had passed before, like, hey, what if these two? And then I just kind of put it out of my mind, like, no, these are separate worlds and separate characters. But Pete's been very encouraging to kind of flesh our worlds out, as much as we can, to bring them in. He's really thinks in terms of like that Chris Claremont X-Men
Right.
style, where it's like, this week they're in the Savage Land, and this week they're in this whole other, they're in space, or this whole other kind of place. And to kind of just allow ourselves to your point, what you were saying, to have fun, to make it a fun experience for a reader, to make it bombastic and enjoyable and unexpected, and to just make it do what we love about what we've always loved about comics, So
Right.
I feel like I butchered the telling of my own story in that, but
no, that was good. I like that you're very passionate about it, and that's always nice to hear.
Yeah, thanks, man. I mean, the funny thing is, and I've talked about it in some other live streams, but it's like these books sometimes end up, and Geronimo would talk about this before, but like these books are sometimes therapy, and it's like you don't realize it at the time, but it's like if you read back through your life when you're working on these things, and you could read back into whatever you were going through at the time, and maybe what you were trying to figure out, and it's all there.
Right.
It honestly, Red Koi was that for me. There was stuff happening where I, I look back at the story, I'm like, oh, I get it. Like what she's trying to figure out here is to a degree what I was trying to figure out. How do you forgive? How do you kind of, continue on when you're hurting and stuff, so the Swan King was the same, and his is very much like I think like maybe like a self-forgiveness type of thing. Like I feel like so many of us were so much more willing, maybe not as often as we should be, but I feel like a lot of times people are way more willing to forgive others than they are themselves.
Right.
Could be maybe I'm like looking at the life of too much. I'm giving people too much credit. I don't know, but I think it's true. It's what I found anyway. And
Yeah.
so I just need to think about that. And this guy he thought what he was doing was right. And it was right. His people were the world was at risk. Um, and it took sacrifice and death to keep it safe, and that's so unfortunately the true case in so much of history in our own lives. It's sad, but it's true. um and nobody wants to be the person to make that decision, but one thing I did want in the Swan King was to show that, well, when you see the battle scenes, he's right out front, and when you look at his face, that scar runs down like straight through his lips. He's not been untouched by the war either.
Right.
So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I'm working through in that, but I'm glad that it's entertaining people. I could just say that.
No, I think you're right. I look at the stuff that I'm writing myself, and a lot of my stuff has to deal with death and forgiveness and a lot of the same themes, I guess. And,
We're so much a culture that is like we don't want to talk about it, and I understand why. But like we don't want to talk about death. We don't want to think about death. We don't really even deal with it until we're right there, and we have to, which is not like ideal. But it's like ancient cultures had ways of dealing with these things, and even our culture had ways of dealing with these things. But I think that we've really tried to sanitize it out. And it's like I can't be too judgmental about that. Like, I get it. It's not fun. It's
right.
not what we want to deal with, but it's also something that has to be dealt with. And I mean, at least we as artists and creators, I don't know, we can try to find a way to work through some of that in our stuff.
Right. And sometimes the readers, they find themselves in that same situation too and can relate to it and
Hmm.
work through it themselves by reading it.
Oh, dude, if I hear that a reader has, I don't know, found comfort or some kind of found something, some kind of I don't know, maybe just a friend in
Exactly.
one of these stories, that means everything. That's huge.
Right.
No, I think, like, for me personally, like, listening to music is comforting.
Mhm.
Like, listening to a song that conveys a certain emotion or something that I'm feeling makes me
Mhm.
feel not alone in that situation.
Absolutely.
And I think we did the same things in through comics.
Yep. I agree.
That's a good point.
It's like when you find that comic that like really when you read that book that you're like, this is my thing. This is totally what I'm into. Like that's how I felt with Hellboy. It's like, holy smokes, he gets me. Like someone else gets it. Like gets this weird thing that we're into and he's done it so well.
Yeah,
Um it's for me it was that moment too, like, oh wow, I'm not the only one that looks at this or hopes for this or finds this cool. I
Yeah, there's some
also
like
feel that
studies.
way. Oh, go ahead, man.
Oh, sorry. No, I was gonna say there's like some studies I saw once that like the reason people like to listen to sad music is that reason they like to feel like they're empathized with.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's I hadn't really considered that with storytelling in the form of comic books. But you're right.
You
It's a huge
have
thing.
you guys ever listened to Jonathan Peugeot's YouTube channel?
Mm-hmm.
uh,
It's called The Symbolic World. He's a carver and he talks a lot about like symbolic thinking, which is like way more in line with like how ancient peoples kind of saw the world. Um but so much of what he talks about is this idea is like the narrative is how we understand the world. And it's like we understand the world through meaning. It's like you look at the world and you don't take in all the facts before you, but you take in points of meaning, points of value. Like this thing right in front of me right here is what's important right now. And you'll kind of move through the world that way. And that's kind of what ancient cultures have structured themselves around. And we've so lost that to a degree. But he kind of talks about ancient stories and sort of what the how they were actually thinking about these things. Um, and so he's actually just made a comic book, which was crowdfunded. Um, but that's exactly what he's talking about. It's like understanding these kind of points of meaning in our days, but also in our lives, like where you have death, or you have a birth, or you have some kind of transformation, and how the culture had some kind of ritual around it, and it was meant to help you, like it or not, the Maasai boy is gonna go out and kill the lion, and that's probably the most terrifying thing he's ever had to do, but it's like, that's also the thing where he's not gonna question, whether or not he's a man after that.
Right.
You know what I mean? Assuming he survived. I remember reading about that. Yeah, I know. I remember reading about that, and I was like, this is insane, but good on you. But it's like these rituals existed, and they weren't arbitrary. They were trying to help you navigate through these, challenging things that are going to affect every life, no matter where you are. But his YouTube channel is really cool.
Let's check that out.
If you want to hear something that'll like break your brain for a little while, that's a good one. But I'm also with you guys in the music too. Like I definitely I've actually fallen away from listening to music recently because I'm absorbing so many podcasts. But I really have to stop because it's too much. It's all too much sometimes.
Yeah, so that's gonna be my next question. What do you listen to when you're working on stuff?
Oh man. Now I've actually I've been trying to work kind of in silence recently just because I was listening to so many podcasts and I was kind of absorbing. I shouldn't say absorbing, but I was trying to absorb so much information and it was just really having a negative impact on me. It was like I was feeling like I was oversaturated and none of it was sinking in. It was just kind of like a sponge.
Right.
So I've actually been trying to work in the quiet, but like when I was really trying to be a better artist, I would listen to those interviews with Greg Capullo and Sean Murphy and Mike Mignola. I tried to absorb as much stuff as I could there. I've really been trying to listen to a lot of stuff actually about like philosophy and religion. I've just really become fascinated with those things because I was never really taught them growing up, not like in a really compelling way. And I never took a philosophy class in college. Actually, that's not true. I took one Asian philosophies class, and it wasn't like a great introduction to the material. So I've been trying to listen to that when I can, and then I listen to a lot of I listen to some fitness podcasts and stuff.
Nice.
I used to be like way more into like lifting weights. That was my life for a while before I got really serious about art. I just wanted to like lift weights and get bigger, and I did. And I hurt myself, and then I had to sort of reevaluate that a little bit. And so, but I've got some like fitness podcasters that I listen to that I like.
Nice.
So I'm kind of trying to fill in gaps of stuff that I didn't get in high school or college or grad school. So art school is not the only thing that you can have, anger at, because I think that we're lacking in a lot of other places too. We'll all complain together. What do you guys listen to?
Usually music, especially when I'm writing.
Really?
Yeah.
I wish I could do that. I hear guys that can do that. Oh, I listen to music while I write. Like that sounds amazing to me because I feel so many emotions when I listen to music.
Yeah.
But I get distracted because then I'm thinking about the music.
Yeah.
I'm so
Well, for me,
jealous of you.
Yeah, music just puts me in a certain space, like a headspace for the story that I'm writing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So I'll like pick and choose a playlist depending on what I'm working on.
Like what? What do you have? Like what do you listen to?
Like right now, I'm listening to a lot of I don't know, Justin. What would you call Time Cop?
Synthwave.
Yeah, synthwave, I guess.
I don't know what that is. I've heard the words.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is.
It's a synthesizer music, but like, so it's interesting because it's like it sounds a little bit retro, but there's a lot of feeling that it feels like it came from the 80s, but there's nothing in the 80s that sounds like that.
That's cool.
Yeah. So if you like Stranger Things, like that kind of feel, that's a lot of what synthwave is.
Oh, cool. So it really is trying to tap into your It really is trying to make you feel an emotion, though. Like that's what it's explicitly going for, not like as a secondary response.
No, I think that is what it's going for. I think it's going for like a nostalgia kind of sense.
I had a friend recently who read a book about nostalgia because it was something. My friend is 84 years old, and he's just been meditating on the idea of nostalgia recently. I was like, oh my gosh, you're so much like deeper than I'll ever be meditating on. It's like I get it, man. Trust me, I've got nostalgia. I'm like, I never really thought of why. Just like I don't know, because what I'm remembering seems better than where I am in this particular moment where I'm thinking about the thing that I want. It's because I want my favorite sandwich from my favorite sandwich place that I no longer live near and doesn't exist anymore. That's why.
Right.
Ben, do you listen to, or I'm sorry, Justin, do you listen to synthwave too? Is that mostly your
Yeah,
music of choice?
it's like Ben said, it kind of depends on what you're writing. So like for me, I make specific playlists based on the story that I'm writing. Like I have one titled after the story that I'm writing on Spotify. I just collect as many songs as I can that put me in the mood to write the atmosphere to write that story. So yeah, I've got one that's got like a bunch of like synth wave, retro synth. I don't know. There's like a bunch of subgenres for it. I'm not gonna pretend I know them all, but
pretend. Do it. I'll believe anything you say.
GJ says synthwave is incredible.
I believe that.
It is, man. Yeah, GJ is a fellow Time Cop 1983 fan too.
Yeah.
GJ is a good egg.
Yeah, he is.
But yeah, or like, sometimes it's just instrumental, sometimes it's yacht rock or something. So it just
yacht rock.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is, but it sounds like something you'd listen to on a yacht, which sounds like a good time.
That's pretty good.
Did I get it? Did I do well?
Nailed it.
All right, this is going great.
You're doing good, Tyler.
You say instrumental. I was like, okay, I can listen to instrumental while I write, but I mostly would listen to instrumental while I draw. And it sounds way lamer than like, I don't know, the cool music that you're talking about. But like I'll hear I'll play that song from the Gladiator soundtrack, like when he's dead and he's moving into the afterlife. That's called Elysium.
Yeah.
By Lisa Gerrard. And I loved that song, like that music so much, the whole vibe of it. I was like, oh man, this is like exactly how I feel like in my story sometimes. And I played that on repeat for hours when when I'm working on something like that.
Yeah.
So that's something interesting. Like I talked to my friends about like listening to songs on repeat, and a lot of them can't do it. Like they can like a song a lot. They can say they love a song, but if you play it more than twice, or like I am sick of that song, you stop playing that.
Oh,
that song right now.
And I'm like, oh, if I like a song, I will listen to it to death. Like,
absolutely, yeah. Like, there's
I'm like that. Like, are you guys like that? Are you are you obsessive about the things you like? Because I am. Like, if I like a thing, I've always been. I'm going to read every single book I can find about it. Yeah. I'm going to learn as much about it as I can. I'm going to try to absorb as much of it as I can. I can't just sort of kind of like something.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, yeah, I do the same thing.
That's part of it.
But I like, I'll just put the whole album on repeat and do that for like 6 months.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And then you get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm at peace with this right now. I don't have to listen to this today. I could, but I'm at peace with this for a little while. And then you might let it go for a bit.
Yep.
And you come back to it.
Yep. I came back to, and it wasn't even because of so I don't know if you guys are Foo Fighters fans, but like Taylor Hawkins, he died recently, and I was so sad to hear that. But like the night before he died, I thought of the song Aurora on their album, Nothing Left to Lose, and I loved that album. That's one I listened to death. That was one where, in terms of rock, I listened to that album, I was like, "Okay, yeah, this is the thing that I like. This is what I wanna listen to, all the time." And I just listened to that song. I was like, "God, it's such an amazing song." And I sent it to my best friend because he has got similar taste in music as me. And then the next day, I heard about Taylor, and I was like, "Oh no!" But it took me back to how I felt about that record, and it was just I couldn't listen to it enough.
Right.
You know, what I'm saying is I really liked it.
Yeah.
No, they had a song called February Stars, and that's probably one of my favorite ones that they put out. I think it was on the Color and Shape is the name of the album, and that song always brings me back to like a very specific point when I was like, say 16 when I first heard it, and it still does that. Every now and then when I want to feel nostalgic for having a bunch of pimples, I'll listen to that song.
And it's amazing how this stuff can find its way into your art, though, because it's like we make comic books, and we're listening to, a rock song or, a synthwave song or something that may seem completely the only touch point could be the emotion that it's helping to convey.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, I don't know, it's cool to be at a place in life where there's a place to put it,
Right.
Because I didn't know what to do with how I felt about the song Aurora, when I was, 16 or whatever, and listening to it, and just I was like, this is making me feel something, but I have no idea how to express it. And it's like now I can find a place for it,
Right.
and it's in a samurai fantasy comic book. I didn't expect that, but here we are.
So, what's your writing process like?
So with any kind of writing process that I actually have, it always comes from the art. Like the art needs to come first in the sense that I at least need to draw the character, and I needed to do that painting of Aiko and the castle before I knew there was an Aiko in a castle. You know
Right.
what and so for me, it starts with the art. And sorry if you hear my kids screaming; they're fine, I'm sure. And that's kind of my point, or my sketchbook. I'll find something in my sketchbook, and I'll follow that trail wherever it leads, and kind of see. But I always need it's just what prompts me to ask the questions, and then kind of start to think about, like, I need to know. I don't know, I need to know my character's culture, even if it's a culture that's loosely based on something real. Like, sure, she's loosely based on samurai culture, but I'm not trying to tell a historical narrative. I'm just trying to live in that fantasy world, like, King Arthur is an English knight. It's like,
Right.
sure, but no, but sure. Um, and so I need to understand her culture, though. I need to understand what's driving her, why she's here, what's brought her here, who her parents are, what they were like, and why they aren't here or why they are here. So that's always my starting point is the art. I'm always like, I don't know. It's funny to think of myself as a writer because it just doesn't feel right. Because I'm always artist first, and just kind of following these trails. And it's funny because you get to this point, and you know what I'm talking about, where you think about your characters enough, you live with them enough, they start to talk to you about what they're doing. Like,
Right.
you
Yeah.
just sort of get out of their way in a sense and let them do their thing. Like, really? We're doing this, or you're thinking that, or you're going here? Yeah, this is where it's going, man. All right. I trust you, voice in my head that exists. So, or maybe that's just me.
Hey, whatever works.
Yeah, I'm sure it's fine. But yeah, so I'll kind of go from there. I don't know. I have a. I don't know. I feel like at this point, I kind of know. I don't know. I know I enjoy what I'm doing. I enjoy where I am in terms of my creation. I like what it has. This is the stuff that I'm into. I like warriors with swords. I like a vaguely magical world, but I don't really like like Nick loves Doctor Strange and mystical magic and all that cool stuff. Like he loves that stuff, and I think that's cool. And if you've seen any of the stuff that he's drawn in that world, he kills it, and it looks awesome. I don't have that. Like that's not my area of interest. Um, Mostly because I don't think I'd be good at it. Like I would never pick magician as my character if I was doing like a RPG.
Right.
Um, but I want that kind of freedom for weird things and spells in that Hellboy sense, like Justin, holy smokes, man, I just looked up. Wow. Oh my.
Yeah, let me put you on full screen.
Yeah, blow that up. Oh my goodness.
Oh, nice.
Dude.
Thanks.
Wow.
That is really nice.
That is sick. That is so sick. I forgot what I was saying, but nobody needs to listen to me. Everyone just needs to look at that awesome drawing.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I get all these at the end, right? That's how it works. Is that what I understand? No, no. Okay,
that's right. Yeah.
But yeah, I like the warrior with the sword. Oh yeah, there. This is Naga. This is Uhira Naga, the dragon, as he's called.
That's awesome.
Ruthless samurai warlord, father of Aiko. And he was, I don't know, he was an interesting character because, like, I mean, you're thinking back to another. I always thought there was an interesting line between these, especially when you learn in history, but like these brutal men, these brutal warlords, these brutal warriors, who were also, their fathers, they're and husbands in many cases, but like there's and God knows what they were like, but there's something to them that had that familial connection. It's not all brutality. I mean, it can't all be brutality, even if that's what we're more comfortable thinking, because then you can kind of just label them monsters and not think that they're actually anything like you or me. But so I was just thinking, I was like, I want him. He's gonna be a bad guy in a very clear way. He's gonna do something terrible. But at the same time, like the heartbreak for Aiko is that she loved her father, and her father loved her, which is the crazier thing. Like if you read issue 5, like you get that window into her as a little girl, and Naga trying to teach her, that you need to embrace your shadow. Like sorry to sound like Jungian for a second, but like that you need to embrace your shadow, if you're going to survive, if you're going to make it. And so that's interesting to me as well in characters, in writing them, is to kind of like look at, like I don't just want to look at I don't want them to be purely defined by their sins. I want them to to be as fleshed out as they can be. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think there's room for some characters of pure nobility and some characters with just pure evil, of course. But I haven't.
We have 3 dimensions to them.
Say that again.
It always makes them more interesting whenever they have like they're 3-dimensional characters. They're fleshed out.
Yeah.
Therefore,
and that's
cardboard cut out of whatever it is, whatever target you need.
Yeah. This is who I don't like today. Yeah, and that's also something that like in a way it was like reconciling, like especially people if you have like an image of your parents or of someone you really admire as like perfect. You know, they seem like they can do no wrong in your eyes. And then, they're human and they inevitably do, and that image just shatters for you. And you recognize that humanity, and in that humanity you're kind of, I feel like you're forced to kind of put the pieces back together in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
And that sucks because if they're your hero, you want them to be your hero,
Right.
Um, and so there's some of that, in the character as well. It's kind of like Aiko has to understand that he is not everything that she had built him up to be. Maybe by her own fault. Maybe it's not that. I mean, and maybe Nago hasn't necessarily hidden anything from her, but she chose to see what she wanted to see. I don't know. We'll figure that out. But um, so that's another thing. The psychology of the characters that helps with the writing. To go back to your question, to think about what's driving them, where their motivations are. Um, yeah. Let's see what else. Oh, and I just like to, I don't know, I like to draw a lot of just, Sean Murphy had these videos on, or these essays on DeviantArt. Remember that website? He had these essays on DeviantArt years back about how to make backgrounds cooler. And he said, it's one way you could stand out, and stand out from the pack as an artist. And I was like, well, I need all the help I can get. So I started thinking about it, and what he said was just make your backgrounds interesting for you to draw. You can't do it with every background. You don't have to, but you want to think about like, okay, well, there's an alleyway back there, and there's a ladder, and there's a fire escape, and the reader can think, oh, it'd be cool to like I could go up that fire escape, and I could like have a cup of coffee or something.
Right.
Like in a comic book, you're not going to do that, but it's like the possibility. You just kind of your mind starts to go with the possibilities of the what ifs, and that makes the world feel more lived in. And so it's like I was drawing. Do you guys like kung fu movies?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the Five Venoms?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think so. No.
I think it's on Netflix still. It's a sweet. It's everything that you want from a kung fu movie. But you have this cool scene. It's like a fight in a courtyard. Like a traditional like Chinese imperial courtyard. And I was like, well, I want something cool like that in my story. Some kind of cool open courtyard where it's like you could recognize it from a movie. And that some cool fight against ninjas has happened there. But that's not what we're doing right now. She's going to fight a ghost. She's going to fight a ghost warrior instead. But you recognize that courtyard. And in that courtyard, I want to have all these weird graves and all this like cool architecture and like these shadowy places where, you know, imperial lords could be, playing a game or, having a drink or something. So I don't know, that always, I really liked that advice, and that kind of helped flesh the world out a bit. I don't know why I just said all that. I don't think that was related to a question at all. But
No, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
well, it makes them fun. It makes backgrounds
Yeah.
a lot more fun to draw.
So we're at an hour and a half now. Are you ready to stop?
Jeez. I can go a little longer.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. If you guys can, I don't want to.
No, we're good.
We're good.
Cool.
So what advice would you give to a young creator who wants to create a samurai warrior comic book?
Yeah. Honestly, I think having talked to, I don't know, a number of young creators at shows and stuff, I think the biggest differentiator between those that want to make comics, that actually want to make comics, and those who think they want to make comics is like whether or not you're already making a comic. And I don't mean that you have to be doing like a full-on graphic. That's the thing I found more often than not is people are already trying to work on their opus and I get it, man. I get it. I drew like almost a 60-page graphic novel and a 99-page graphic novel before I realized I needed to learn how to draw.
Right.
So I totally get that. But I would say, like, if you're not already drawing comics, that's a red flag in a way, though it's not the worst thing in the world, but you need to start. Um, and if you, I don't know, I found a lot of young artists, especially, they're almost paralyzed by the desire to create their opus, where they're like, well, I can't just start because my story is 1,000 pages long, man.
Right.
I'm like, okay, well, try to make a 3-page story set in your world, in the space where we are going to see your character's room, or your character's castle, or your character's, first fight. Something with your character where you're going to get to live in your world for 3 pages. And just do those 3 pages. And just get it done. And then you'll have 3 pages. You'll have something there that you could send to an anthology or something like that. I don't know if anthologies are still the preferred way of trying to get work out there, but it's a good strategy.
Yeah.
And then it forces them to actually reconcile with whether they actually want to make the comic, or if they just kind of like comics and they have an idea. And like, I say that with no judgment whatsoever about where someone lands. I've just found the people that really do want to tend to be doing it in some way. And so I would say do it. Challenge yourself. And then, you know, understand what it means if you don't have that drive to make the 3 pages. That's really my advice. I want people to figure out if they really want to do it, just because it takes a lot more than it gives in a lot of ways.
Right.
Personally, it's very fulfilling, but it's hard. There's a lot, and not hard like some people are actually living a hard life. I'm not trying to make this sound like it's really a thing, but like, if you're gonna add something to your list, making a comic book is a big thing to add.
Right.
So in that sense, I'm saying you could make your life easier. But for those of us who, like, we're gonna do this whether we have the publisher or not.
Right.
We kind of need to get the story out. We need to make it happen.
Yep.
Yeah, start small. Maybe that's the best thing to say. Start small. Give yourself that space to just kind of ease your way into it, and it's fun. 3-page stories are fun.
That's a really good idea. I like that.
Thanks. It's not just me being a jerk.
No.
Do it or do it not. I don't care.
Yeah.
Now, I was at a show. I think it was a free comic book day years ago when we still were allowed to have them. And I met like 3, I guess I'll say young people. I'm in my mid-30s, and they were probably in their 20s, so I can say that. And they had like character sketches and ideas for these entire worlds that they were telling me about. And I was like, oh, cool, that's so cool. Like, have you drawn anything? No. Okay. Maybe start. Maybe do that. And I just felt for them. It was like, I know. I had my gigantic book written, and I drew 59 pages of it. And giving that up when I realized that the art was inconsistent, and I didn't know where the story was going, and I didn't know how to write, and I didn't know how to do anything. It was that sucked. I'll be honest. That really sucked. That was a great moment of humility for me. And at the end of the day, it was like I sort of said that to myself. I was like, do you want to do this, or do you want to do this? Or do you just want to see your name on a comic?
There you go.
I was like, I want to do this. I was like, okay, then what do you have to do? This is me talking to myself. Well, then you gotta wake up early. and you've got to find the time. It's like, all right. So I did, and that's just kind of where it went. But it was like once I was in it, it was so much better than doing it. So much better than the alternative. So, what advice do you guys give to young artists?
Don't do it.
Yeah. The industry's full. Get out.
There's no room in the inn.
How do I get in? Back the way you came.
No, I agree. It's a lot of work, and I think people like the idea of making a comic book more than making a comic book. I think once they get into it, they realize it's a lot of work.
Yeah, it really is. It is a lot, but it's unique, and it's definitely the funny thing is. This kind of shows you where I guess I was mentally, and where I think maybe a lot of young artists find themselves. Like, I think to a large degree, a lot of us feel like, well, if I could just see my name on a comic book, if I could just make a comic book, I'm really gonna be happy. Like, that's gonna be the thing that fulfills me. And I think we all do this to a degree. If I just, I don't know, make this much money this year, or if I just, do X, Y, or Z thing that I'm into, if I, for me, for a lot of years, like if I just squat 405, I'm gonna be, I'm gonna be so happy. And then it's like I saw my name on a comic, but at the time, I was already working on the next thing.
Right.
And so it was like it wasn't that I didn't appreciate it, because I did appreciate it, and it was very cool, and I don't take it for granted at all. But it was like it had become so much more about the process at that point and about the story. Um, that I was like, okay, that's cool, but I've got work to do, which is not maybe the healthiest approach, but I don't know. It's such a cliche, but it very much became that it's about the journey, not the destination type of thing. Don't get me wrong, I have
Right.
desires for the story and goals for the story and the characters and the brand and did I just say the brand? Oh god.
The brand.
I do have that in mind, but it's you know, I'm more detached from thinking that seeing my name on the thing will be the key to my happiness.
Right.
No, making another $1,000 is the key to my happiness. No, I'm just kidding. Tyler Wentland gets canceled after.
Sells out. It's all about the money.
That's right, yes.
No, yeah, I usually tell people if you want to make a comic, then start it now. Don't be a deer in headlights.
Yeah.
Waiting until until you feel like you're ready, because you're never gonna feel like you're ready.
Nope. I still don't feel like I'm ready.
Yeah, so just start. Just start now. You'll get better as you progress.
My daughter said something the other day. I can't remember what it was. She said something like, "Daddy, could you imagine if you were like a professional artist?" And I looked at her. I was like, "Technically, I am a professional artist." She's like, "What?" I was like, "You see me doing this. This is my name on this book that I don't care about. But look at it, because it's my name." And she's just like, "Oh, cool," and just walks away. I'm like, well, it was all worth it. All those early mornings have been worth it. They still are.
She's just trying to keep you humble.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. It was necessary. I don't know how I feel about it. Go ahead, say that again.
So what's next for you? What are you working on?
So right now I'm working on Red Koi issue 7. Issue 6 is with colorist extraordinaire Nick Welch, and then it'll go to letterer extraordinaire Wes Loker. And then in issue 7 is going to then is I'm almost finished with the pencils now, and then I've got to get the inks going. But 6 and 7 are going to be chapter 3 of Red Koi, and that's where we enter the Swan King. Aiko and the Swan King meet on what I call the Carrion Road. He's been drawn out of his castle. She's sort of gone on this, warrior's pilgrimage, and they cross paths and swords.
Nice.
And I can't do the Geronimo thing. My voice is too high pitched. Yeah. And so we meet them, and they tangle, and then they're going to be introduced to some old enemies made new, is what I can say. You might be introduced to some mutant creatures, wink wink. So we're gonna kind of be introduced to where the story is going, kind of some more of the backstory about why the Swan King is on the Carrion Road, what's brought him out, whether he can help Aiko or not, whether they're going to remain enemies or not. His story is going to be fleshed out too, though. The issue 6, to be honest, anybody that wants, I think I said this before, but anybody that wants a second issue of the Swan King, issue 6 of Red Koi is going to give you that. It's going to be mostly, how do I describe it? It's going to be mostly a vampire underworld story.
Oh, cool.
That shows you why the Swan King was sent out and what he's trying to accomplish now outside of the castle. And I don't know. I don't know how long I'm going to keep the characters together, but I really like it. I don't know. It shouldn't sound hubristic to say, but these are my 2 favorite characters. Like, I love they're my favorite characters I've ever created. I've actually created a whole bunch that I've just never really brought to light. And I love drawing them on the page together. They look so cool next to each other. And I think they really complement each other in a strange way. So I'm having a blast drawing it. So it's Red Koi issue 6 and 7. And that'll be chapter 3, and then that'll just kind of set us up. I don't know, like, you can never tell where life's gonna go. But God willing, everything being relatively, I'll say stable in my life. I don't know about the world, but we'll see. But if I'm able to keep doing it, I'm very happy with what I'm making. It'd be nice to have more time to make it, but I also work a day job, and that's got its own challenges. I've got a family who I probably do have to get going soon to hang out with. But those are things that take time that I'm happy to give. But what I'm making here is the thing that I've always wanted to do, even back from when I was learning about Todd McFarlane doing his thing, and Mike Mignola doing his thing. It's a different circumstance, but I'm in very, very blessed position, so I'll kind of keep just hammering away at it until people are sick of it, or until the tides change, and as they need to.
Right.
But if people like it, I'm going to keep doing it.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, thanks. And I look forward to seeing your guys' project too.
Yeah, we do too.
Sounds like you are too.
Yeah, maybe.
We'll see. We'll see.
Well, the descriptor sounded cool. So if anything, you've given me hope or just set me up for disappointment and waiting.
No.
How far are you guys from putting something out?
Oh, we're quite a ways away. Like I said, we're just in the writing process right now. So, and we're still like developing characters, creating characters.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, last year we did a GoFundMe. We put out an anthology book.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
What was the anthology theme?
It was kind of like a horror anthology, kind of just weird stories, Bigfoot, Lovecraft, ghost stories. Cool. Yeah.
That sounds like more of the stuff that I'm into. Like I'm not as much like I don't know what the genres of horror are. I'm so not a horror guy. I shouldn't say I'm a horror guy. But like I did a tweet a few weeks ago where it was like there was a scene in Red Koi that I was trying to create that was like reminded me of the opening scene from the movie Anaconda. I love that movie. I like creature features. I like big animals and stuff. Like Creature from the Black Lagoon is my favorite.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah, I love that movie, and I finally bought. Is it Adam Hughes' comic adaptation? No, wait. He did a comic adaptation.
Did he really?
Not Adam Hughes.
Art Adams.
Art Adams. Thank you.
Really, I didn't know that.
Yes,
I didn't know that either.
So cool. It's
I would love to see that.
Yeah, my brother-in-law's roommate showed me a copy at Comic-Con one year, and I couldn't find the book at Comic-Con, so I finally, after he showed it to me, I was like, well, I always wanted to find this somewhere, but I don't think that's going to happen, so I just buckled down and bought it, like at comicshop.com or something, and it's so cool.
That's awesome.
But I love stuff like that, like naturally occurring, like freaks of nature and anything with like a giant crocodile or a giant snake or some big shark or something. Like, yeah, I love that. So that's like me as a horror fan, but I like ghost stories and stuff like that. And that all sounds very cool. Well, guys, I hate to say it, but I probably got to go. But this has been a lot of fun.
That's all right, man.
And I really appreciate the invitation. Really, thank
you for the time.
Well, I mean, I guess that sounds bad because I've just been talking about myself the whole time. But it's been really great to meet you guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And wow, thank you for your art. Holy smokes! I don't want to show mine now.
No, we'll post these up.
Dudes, wow, very cool.
All right, Tyler. Well, again, thank you for your time and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Anytime, reach out again. And I'd love to come back on sometime.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely do this again.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
All right, you too. Have a good
Bye-bye.
night.
See you.
All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. Next week, we're not doing Sketchat. I think we're going to take a 2-week break.
Yeah.
And so for right now on the schedule, the 30th, we have Anthony Gabino, who's going to come on the show.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. All right. So, everybody, thanks again for watching. See ya.
See you guys later. Have a good weekend.